Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into breaking news. Coming out of Lithuania,
Oh, wow.
a DHL cargo plane has crashed
Oh, no.
near Vilnius Airport,
Oh,
and it's literally unfolding as we speak.
wow.
So we're using reports from DW,
Okay.
a really solid news source,
Yeah, I know because
international,
yeah,
to kind of piece this whole thing together,
right.
But this isn't just about, you know, aviation regulations or twisted metal.
Right.
There were casualties,
Oh gosh.
which always makes these things hit a lot closer to home.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's just lay out the basic facts as we have them.
Okay.
So early Monday morning, local time,
Okay.
a DHL cargo plane, it was operated by Swiftair,
Okay.
crashed about 1 kilometer from Vilnius Airport.
Oh.
It took off from Leipzig, Germany,
Okay.
which is a major hub for DHL,
Mm-hmm.
and was on its way to Vilnius.
Okay.
Now, sadly, one crew member, a Spanish national, died in the crash,
Oh, that's awful.
and 3 others were injured: a German, a Lithuanian, and another Spaniard.
Wow.
So the plane skidded for hundreds of meters before crashing.
Oh my gosh.
And get this, it narrowly missed a residential house.
You know, that really makes you think about the what ifs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
had that plane hit the house directly,
Right.
we could be looking at a much larger disaster.
Absolutely. A terrifying thought.
Yeah.
Really underscores just how serious this incident is.
Yeah.
But thankfully, emergency crews got on scene really quickly,
Okay, good.
evacuated 12 residents from that nearby house.
Wow.
And luckily, the house sustained only minor damage.
Okay.
But the big question everyone's asking, Mike,
Right.
what caused the crash?
Yeah, what caused the crash?
I mean,
what do we know?
the investigation is underway.
Okay.
But it's important to understand these things take time.
Right.
I mean, they have to comb through the wreckage,
Yeah.
analyze the black box recordings.
Speaking of black box.
Can you quickly just explain to our listeners what that is and why it's so important to these investigations?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
So the black box is actually 2 separate recorders.
Okay.
You have a flight data recorder
Okay.
and you have a cockpit voice recorder.
Okay.
The flight data recorder, it tracks all sorts of technical information
Oh, interesting.
like altitude,
Okay.
airspeed,
Yeah.
heading,
Good.
engine performance.
Gotcha.
And the cockpit voice recorder captures any conversations
Oh, wow.
between the pilots,
Okay.
any other sounds in the cockpit,
Interesting.
so they can reconstruct the events.
So it's like a window into the cockpit even after a crash.
Exactly.
That's got to be invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, it really helps them piece together those last few moments, understand what the crew was experiencing.
Okay, so now I know Lithuanian authorities haven't ruled out terrorism.
Right.
And that adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
To this story.
I mean, we have to consider, the current geopolitical climate, especially considering
Yeah.
some recent incidents with incendiary devices being sent through cargo,
Right.
particularly from the Baltic states.
That's right. There were those fires at DHL facilities in Leipzig,
Yeah.
Warsaw, even Birmingham in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain these incidents a little bit to our listener?
Yeah, so in recent months, we've had these reports of suspicious packages containing flammable materials,
Oh, wow.
and they're being shipped through cargo networks.
Okay.
And some of these packages have ignited,
Okay.
causing fires at those DHL facilities
Right.
and raising concerns about potential sabotage or even targeted attacks.
And some officials have suggested a possible link to Russia, haven't they?
Yeah, particularly given that Lithuania
Right.
shares a border with Kaliningrad,
Yeah.
which is that Russian exclave
Right.
situated between Lithuania and Poland.
Mhm.
And Kaliningrad holds significant strategic importance for Russia, both militarily and economically.
Right.
So it really makes the region a potential flashpoint for tensions.
Mhm.
The German foreign minister even used the term hybrid incident
Right.
when referring to these fires,
Yeah.
suggesting they were deliberately orchestrated,
Right.
blending conventional and unconventional tactics,
Right.
which is often associated with, state-sponsored activities.
Right.
But it's important to note that Russia has denied any involvement,
Yeah, of course.
and nothing conclusive has been proven.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
It definitely adds another dimension to this story, but
Mhm.
it's really tempting to jump to conclusions.
Right.
We really need to wait for that official investigation to unfold.
Absolutely.
It's still so early.
Speculation doesn't help anyone.
Right.
We need to let investigators do their work.
Yeah.
Rely on evidence-based findings before drawing any conclusions.
So the DW article quotes an aviation expert, Vinkas Snurpūnas. And he says he doesn't see any immediate signs of sabotage.
Interesting.
He points to the lack of contact with the tower and the plane's, typical approach as indicators.
Okay.
But how can an expert make that kind of assessment at such an early stage?
Well, even in those initial stages, there are things they can look at
Yeah.
to form some preliminary assessments.
Okay.
They can analyze radar data,
Okay.
track the plane's flight path,
Okay.
speed, altitude.
Okay.
They can review those communication logs,
Okay.
check for any distress calls or unusual communications.
Right.
A typical approach would suggest
Right.
the plane was following standard procedures
Right.
for landing,
Okay.
which could mean that the crew wasn't battling some unexpected situation.
Right. So they're looking for any deviations from the norm,
Exactly, to
Right.
indicate a problem.
whether technical or deliberate.
Exactly.
It's like putting together a puzzle, right?
Mhm.
And those early pieces of information can be valuable clues.
Yes.
And this puzzle has a lot of pieces, especially with,
Yeah.
that added layer of geopolitical tension.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like the investigation could take a while.
Yeah, it could. It definitely could.
The Lithuanian police chief actually said it could take up to a week.
Well, yeah, that's not surprising considering the complexity of the situation.
Right.
They have to be thorough and meticulous to
Yeah.
ensure they uncover all the facts.
It's a good reminder that sometimes getting to the truth
Yeah,
takes time.
it does.
We live in a world where we expect instant answers. But
Right.
complex investigations like this,
Mhm.
demand patience
Yeah,
and a commitment to uncovering those facts,
absolutely.
no matter how long it takes.
Well said.
So while we wait for more information to come out,
Yeah.
let's shift our focus a little to the crash itself.
Okay.
The article mentions that the plane just skidded for a few hundred meters
Right.
before crashing.
So those skid marks can tell us a lot
Okay.
about the plane's final moments. Investigators will examine the length, direction, and any patterns in those skid marks
Oh, wow.
to reconstruct that sequence of events.
Interesting.
Were they attempting an emergency landing?
Right.
Did they lose control suddenly?
Yeah.
Were the brakes applied?
Wow.
Those skid marks hold a lot of clues.
Yeah. And it also says that the plane's debris somewhat caught a residential house.
That's incredibly lucky, considering how much worse it could have been.
Yeah.
That near miss really highlights the importance of considering not just the immediate impact of the crash,
Yeah.
but also the potential collateral damage.
Right.
It's a reminder that accidents like this can have far-reaching consequences.
It does, yeah.
And
then it says that residential infrastructure around the house was on fire.
oh, wow.
That sounds concerning.
It does raise some questions, yeah.
Yeah.
Investigators will need to determine the source of that fire
Right.
and its role in the overall incident. Was it caused by the crash itself?
Yeah.
Was there something flammable on board the plane?
Oh.
Or was it something in the surrounding environment?
Okay.
It's another piece of the puzzle they'll have to solve.
It's a lot to unpack, and it's all happening in real time.
Yeah.
This deep dive is shaping up to be a fascinating exploration, not just of a plane crash,
Mm-hmm.
but also of, aviation investigation.
Right.
And the geopolitical landscape it sits within.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're seeing how a seemingly isolated event can just ripple outwards
Right.
and touch upon so many different aspects of our world.
And what's striking is how this incident intersects with those, recent incidents
Yeah.
of incendiary devices being sent via cargo.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really makes you think about the interconnectedness of everything.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
In today's world, it's impossible to view events in isolation.
Right.
Everything is connected. This incident underscores that reality in a very tangible way.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that even with all of our technological advancements,
Mm-hmm.
Safety protocols,
Yeah,
accidents can and do happen.
right.
The consequences can be devastating.
Very true, yeah.
Yeah.
It underscores the importance of ongoing vigilance,
Yeah.
constant improvement,
Right.
and the need to learn from these incidents to prevent them from happening again.
So as we conclude this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thought you want our listeners to take away?
I'd say the key takeaway here is just the importance of critical thinking
Okay.
and avoiding jumping to conclusions.
Right.
In a world flooded with information,
Yeah.
it's crucial to approach news and events with a discerning eye.
Right.
We have to be patient,
Yeah.
consider multiple perspectives,
Right.
wait for evidence-based findings
Okay.
before forming those definitive judgments.
Well said. And remember, This is a developing situation.
It is.
We will continue to follow this story and bring you any updates
Okay.
or new insights as they become available.
That's good.
So, in the meantime,
Yeah.
reflect on what we've discussed today
Okay.
and consider those broader implications.
Yeah.
What stands out to you? What questions does this raise in your mind?
That's a great point.
Let us know on social media.
Yeah, let us know.
We're always eager to hear from you and engage in these thought-provoking conversations.
Who knows, your insights might even spark the next deep dive.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting to consider how this crash will impact DHL's operations in the region.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Vilnius Airport is a key transportation hub.
Right.
This incident could have ripple effects
Right.
on cargo flows,
Yeah.
supply chains.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
You know, we often think about the immediate human costs of these
Right.
incidents, but
Yeah.
the economic consequences can be pretty significant.
Oh, absolutely.
I wonder how DHL will adjust its routes and schedules while the investigation is ongoing.
It'll be interesting to see how they manage it.
Yeah.
You know, they'll need to balance
Yeah.
maintaining their service
Right.
with ensuring safety,
Right.
cooperating fully with the investigation.
Right. Speaking of the investigation,
Yeah.
what are some of the specific challenges
Okay.
that investigators might face
Right.
in this particular case?
For starters, it's an international incident.
Oh, right.
You've got the plane operated by a Spanish company
Right.
flying for a German logistics giant,
Right.
and it crashed in Lithuania.
Yeah.
So that means coordinating information,
Right.
expertise from multiple countries,
Right.
which can be really complex
Yeah.
and time-consuming.
Yeah. I imagine language barriers and differing legal procedures could create some hurdles as well.
Absolutely. And then you have that added layer of
Yeah.
potential political sensitivities,
All right.
especially given, you know,
Right.
the ongoing tensions between Lithuania and Russia.
Hmm.
The investigators need to navigate those very carefully
Right.
to ensure the investigation remains impartial,
Right.
focused on finding the truth.
It's a very delicate balancing act.
Yeah, it is.
For sure. I mean, they need to be thorough,
Right.
leave no stone unturned.
Yeah.
But they also need to be mindful
Mm,
of that broader political context
absolutely.
and avoid fueling any unnecessary speculation or anything like that.
Exactly. It's a high-pressure situation.
Yeah.
You know, the investigators deserve a lot of credit
Yeah, they do.
for taking on such a complex and sensitive task.
Yeah. So while we wait for more information
Yeah.
to emerge from
Yeah.
the investigation,
Yeah.
let's kind of circle back to the human impact
Okay.
of this crash.
Yeah.
We know one crew member tragically lost their life.
Right.
3 others were injured.
Right.
What kind of support is typically provided to the families of the victims
Oh,
and the survivors in these situations?
well, there are usually several layers of support. You know, the airline and the operating company
Right.
typically provide immediate assistance,
Okay.
including helping families travel to the crash site,
Yeah.
providing counseling and grief support,
Right.
handling logistical matters
Okay.
like insurance claims and things like that.
And I imagine there are also international organizations
Mm-hmm.
and government agencies
Mm-hmm.
that might offer assistance,
Yeah.
especially when citizens of multiple countries are involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You know, organizations like the ICAO,
Okay.
the EASA,
Okay.
they often play a role in supporting these investigations,
Yeah.
coordinating international cooperation.
Right.
And in this case, with crew members from Spain,
Uh-huh.
Germany, Lithuania,
Yeah.
we can expect those consular services from all 3 countries
Okay.
to be actively involved in assisting their citizens.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's heartening to know that there's a network
Mm-hmm.
of support in place,
Yeah.
for those affected by these tragedies. Now, earlier we were talking about the black box recordings
Right.
and how they can help investigators understand what happened in the cockpit.
Mm.
What other kinds of evidence will they be looking at?
Oh, they'll be examining a wide range of evidence.
Okay.
They'll meticulously document the wreckage,
Okay.
looking for any signs
Mm.
of mechanical failure,
Okay.
impact damage,
Yeah.
anything unusual.
Okay.
They'll analyze the plane's maintenance records,
Okay.
see if there were any pre-existing issues,
Right.
that could have contributed to the crash.
Right.
They'll also be looking at weather data,
Okay.
air traffic control recordings,
Okay.
any other relevant information
Okay.
that could shed light on the circumstances surrounding this incident.
It sounds incredibly thorough.
It is, yeah.
It's like putting together a giant high-stakes jigsaw puzzle.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Just like with a puzzle, every piece matters.
Right.
Even those seemingly insignificant details could hold the key to understanding what caused the crash
Right.
and preventing similar incidents from happening in the future.
And it's not just about finding the cause.
Right.
It's about learning from these tragedies and improving aviation safety as a whole.
Right, absolutely. Every accident investigation is an opportunity to identify any weaknesses
Okay.
in safety protocols,
Right.
training procedures, or aircraft design.
Right.
By carefully analyzing what went wrong,
Yeah.
we can make flying safer for everyone.
So even though these incidents are incredibly sad, they can ultimately lead to
Yeah.
positive changes
Yeah.
in the aviation industry.
Exactly. They serve as powerful reminders
Right.
that safety is an ongoing process.
Right.
It requires constant vigilance,
Okay.
innovation, and a commitment to learning from past mistakes.
Now, earlier you mentioned that the expert quoted in the article doesn't see any immediate signs of sabotage.
Right.
I'm curious, what would investigators be looking for if they were suspecting foul play?
Well, if sabotage were suspected,
Yeah.
they'd be looking for evidence of tampering, explosives residue,
Okay.
any signs that the crash was deliberately caused.
Right.
They'd also be looking closely at the security procedures
Okay.
at that departure airport.
Right.
The cargo handling process, the backgrounds of the crew members, ground staff.
Right.
See if there are any red flags.
So I imagine that kind of investigation would involve a lot of specialized forensic expertise
Absolutely.
and close collaboration with intelligence agencies.
It would become much more complex,
Yeah.
a much more sensitive investigation
Right.
involving a wider range of stakeholders, requiring a high level of international cooperation.
So while we're waiting for more definitive answers from the investigators,
Yeah.
it's helpful to understand those different avenues they'll be exploring, right?
Absolutely.
From technical malfunctions, potential human error, to, yes, even the possibility of deliberate sabotage.
Exactly. It's important to keep an open mind,
Right.
consider all possibilities
Right.
until we have conclusive evidence.
No, I'm also curious about the role of human factors in aviation accidents.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about those technical failures, external factors like weather,
Right.
but how often do human errors contribute?
Well, human error is a significant factor
Okay.
in a large percentage of aviation accidents.
Really?
It could be anything from pilot fatigue,
Oh, okay.
miscommunication,
Yeah.
poor decision-making under pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Investigators will be looking closely at the crew's actions and decisions in those hours and minutes leading up to the crash to see if any human factors played a role.
It's a reminder that even with all the technology and automation,
Yeah.
In modern aviation,
Right.
the human element remains a critical factor in safety.
It's a very important point.
Yeah.
We often focus on those technological aspects of aviation,
Right.
but that human factor is just as important, if not more so.
And I'm also thinking about the emotional toll this crash must be taking on the families of the victims, the surviving crew members.
Yeah.
It's hard to even imagine that pain and grief.
It's truly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that there's a human cost to these incidents
Right.
that goes far beyond those immediate casualties.
Right.
The families, friends, colleagues
Right.
of those involved,
Yeah.
they're all affected in profound ways.
Their lives are forever changed
You're right.
by this tragedy.
The ripples of these events extend far beyond that crash site.
Yeah.
They touch countless lives and leave lasting impacts
Right.
on individuals, families, communities.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to consider as we await, further developments in the story?
Well, first and foremost, I'd encourage them to remember that these investigations take time.
Right.
It's tempting to want those instant answers,
Right.
but it's crucial to allow the experts to do their work thoroughly, meticulously.
Patience is key in these situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And secondly, I'd encourage them to be critical consumers of information.
Okay.
In a world awash in news and social media,
Right.
it's more important than ever to verify sources.
Right.
Be wary of sensationalism.
Yeah.
Avoid spreading misinformation.
So it's all about finding those reliable sources.
Yeah.
And sticking to the facts.
Exactly.
Right.
And finally, I'd encourage them to think about the broader context surrounding this crash. You know, it's not just a tragic accident.
Right.
It's an event that touches upon various aspects of our world, you know, from international relations and geopolitics to the complexities of aviation safety and that human cost of these incidents.
Right. It's a reminder that even seemingly isolated events can have those far-reaching consequences.
Precisely. And that's what makes this deep dive so compelling.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about uncovering the cause of a plane crash.
Right.
It's about exploring the interconnectedness of our world.
Right.
And understanding how even a single incident can illuminate, you know, the complexities of the human experience.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
You know, from that initial breaking news to the potential geopolitical implications and the human cost of this crash.
Yeah.
But as we wrap things up,
I
want to kind of bring it back to the core of it all.
Right.
The investigation.
You're right. Ultimately, it's the investigators who will determine what really happened.
Right.
Provide some answers, hopefully prevent something like this from happening again.
And they have quite the task ahead of them.
They do.
I mean, they're sifting through wreckage, analyzing those black box recordings, interviewing witnesses, all while dealing with that international cooperation.
Yeah.
And those potential political sensitivities that we talked about.
Absolutely. It's a demanding job requiring a broad range of expertise, you know, from aviation engineering to forensic science.
Yeah.
They'll be looking at everything from the plane's maintenance history to the weather conditions at the time of the crash.
And they're talking to those surviving crew members, right?
Right.
Trying to get their firsthand accounts of those critical moments.
Absolutely.
Leading up to the crash.
Those personal accounts can reveal things that data alone can't.
Right.
You know, imagine hearing about any unusual noises, vibrations, maybe warning signals they might have noticed before the crash. I mean, that's invaluable insight.
It's like trying to piece together this giant jigsaw puzzle, isn't it?
It is.
Each bit of evidence, each interview, each data point just kind of helps build a clearer picture
of what happened.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
You know, the investigators are those master puzzle solvers, carefully fitting together all those fragments of information to create a complete narrative.
And speaking of narratives, this incident has sparked so many different ones already.
It has.
Especially in the media.
Right.
Some are focusing on that potential terrorism angle.
Right.
Others emphasizing the need to wait for the investigation's findings before jumping to conclusions.
It's natural for people to try and make sense of a tragedy like this.
Right.
We all want explanations.
Yeah.
And when definitive answers aren't immediately available, we sometimes fill in those gaps with speculation.
And that's why it's so important to be discerning about the information that we consume. We have to be aware of our own biases.
Right.
Check our sources. Avoid drawing conclusions before all the facts are in.
Couldn't agree more. And that's a key principle behind this show, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Deep Dive is all about encouraging critical thinking and nuanced understanding, especially when we're dealing with these complex, evolving situations.
Exactly. We don't claim to have all the answers.
Right.
You know, we're here to equip our listeners with the tools and knowledge they need to form their own informed opinions.
Exactly.
So as we leave our listeners with this developing story, what's the one question you want them to ponder?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think I'd ask them this. What factors do you believe will be most important for investigators as they work to determine the cause of this crash?
That's a good one.
Let us know on social media.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts.
We're genuinely curious to hear what you think.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic question.
It is.
It goes beyond this particular incident. It encourages our listeners to think critically about aviation safety, the investigative process, and really the complexities of the world we live in. And that's what the Deep Dive is all about. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating and thought-provoking topic.
Sounds good.
Until then, stay curious.